Hello, and welcome to another edition of Relatable. I'm your host, Stephanie Michelle. If this is your first time tuning in, thank you for joining us. This show is dedicated to exploring social norms and encouraging means of relating that actually improve our well-being. In that dedication, the emphasis is on taking time for meaningful conversations like the one we're going to have today. To be clear, when I say meaningful, I'm focused on understanding and connection. Meaningful includes all emotions, the good ones and the bad, happy, sad, excited, angry, etc. The intention of meaningful conversation is not to convince someone that you're right and they're wrong. Meaningful conversations are sometimes just the start of something that require more talk time, and sometimes the conversation stays open for continuous growth and evolution. Many friendships and love affairs are an example of a continuous conversation. I get the most excited when my love for learning something new and meaningful conversation is combined into one thought-provoking documentary. 3 come to mind that are special to me and are great examples of starting a much-needed conversation. The first one is called Accidental Courtesies with Daryl Davis. Daryl is a jazz musician and a black man that pursues sitting down with, wait for it, KKK members for just conversation. And over time, many of these KKK members come to consider Daryl as a friend and eventually leave the KKK without Daryl asking them to do so. That is amazing to me. And at some point, they actually surrender their hoods and their robes to Daryl. It's pretty amazing stuff. Just started with a conversation. The second documentary is called White Rights, Meeting the Enemy with Dia Khan. Dia is a Muslim woman and a human rights defender. In this documentary, she sits down with white supremacist leaders to learn about them and share things about herself. Again, a few members decide to leave their groups after meeting Dia, and she doesn't ask them to. They just consider her a friend, and they admit that they've never met a Muslim person before, and they think differently, so they rethink, being a member of this group. And the last documentary where meaningful conversation unfolds throughout it is called Believer with Dan Reynolds from Magic Dragon. Dan, as you may know, is Mormon. He grew up Mormon in Utah. Since marrying his wife, who was not Mormon, he started to have some thoughts that were weighing on his heart. His love for his Mormon faith, he loves his Mormon faith, but he was having a hard time with Mormon views towards the LGBT community. He was also very concerned with the high suicide rate in Utah, and particularly with Mormon teens. And Dan's answer to all this is he decided to put on a music festival called Love Loud. I'm wearing the shirt today. Where he would just bridge a gap between the Mormon community and the LGBT community. This conversation is still evolving. Last year they had their first Love Loud festival, and this month they're having the second one. I dare you not to watch that documentary and shed a tear or feel that everything and everyone is connected and understand the importance of a conversation for the purpose of understanding. When we don't have these types of conversations, we get hurt by our own assumptions. Today's conversation has the potential to save friendships between women all around the world. When women take it for granted that their friendship between each other will stay the same when one of the friends becomes a parent. Today, welcome with me Liz McTan. Liz McTan is an entrepreneur, a blogger, a singer, and above all, a mom. Her blog, The Redheaded Rambling Mama, On her blog, The Redheaded Rambling Mama, she focused on the necessity of connection, woman after my own heart, to the village with the need to survive after having a child. Liz also writes about maintaining a sense of self after children and beating the illusion of perfect parenting, which we see through social media. She is a proponent of traveling, protesting, and even attending festivals with her kids. Through her battle with postpartum depression and anxiety, she has found a new sense of self and purpose in writing and music with her band Echo Hill. Her own Wander Outfitters is an adventure shop in Fullerton, California.
Yes.
Welcome, Liz.
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad to.
That was a mouthful.
I know.
I tend to choose like long names for a lot of my stuff, and then I don't realize it's a problem until somebody else tries to say it later, and I'm like, the Redheaded Rambling Mama, what's the big deal?
Right.
I talk very quickly, and I'll have to try to slow that down. But I don't realize it's a problem until later. Like Wander Outfitters, to me, I'm like, oh, that's no big deal. That's the name of my shop. It makes sense to me. Initially, I did just want to call it Wander, and then we couldn't get the URL.
Well, maybe the whole thing, though, helps people remember it, because they're having conversations like that. It's like, how do you say the name of this without like stumbling a little bit? Yeah. It's all good.
Maybe I'll try to shorten it at some point, but it is what it is.
It is. You have other things to do right now.
I do have a little bit of things on my plate.
I gotcha. So welcome. The first thing that I always ask guests that sit in that chair is, before we get into the topic of today, which we're going to talk about, maintaining friendships between women that don't have children and women that do. Is there anything else that you just want to clear off your mind, that's kind of pulling your attention that you just want to share?
I think one of the things that's on my mind a lot right now is that we have children being detained from their parents, and it's really, really heartbreaking to think of my own child separated from me if I were to like run to another country and be trying to find safety and doing these crazy things in order to find it, going through the desert, going through over an ocean, or whatever you're trying to do to find safety for your child, and then to have that child taken from you, maybe never seeing them again. That's just been heartbreaking for me to think about. It's been on my mind.
How could it not be? I mean, just the idea of being separated. I mean, many people, the only way they can relate to that story is having a moment where they were separated from their parents in a mall, or maybe they lost their, vice versa, the parent lost the child, and how traumatic that one moment is of doubt.
I cannot even, like when I was a little kid, I remember getting lost in a Kmart. And that was like horrifying. I cried my eyes out.
And you still remember.
And I still remember. I was like 4 years old.
Yeah.
And now as a parent, to think that my children that are younger than mine's she's only 1.5. Her name is Juniper, and I've seen photos of children younger than her being like taken away from breastfeeding mothers, and it just kills me. That just like is heartbreaking to me that we can't have more empathy.
Yeah.
And I hope that we're going to figure that out.
This might be the one good reason why we need more women, and particularly mothers in seats of, in positions of government.
I'm a huge fan of Tammy Duckworth, because she's chosen to make that fight of breastfeeding her child and continuing to be in her position in the Senate, even though she just had a child a couple months ago. And I think that the more women we have that are just taking that leap into government, the better that will get, because we do need that perspective of how it feels to be in those shoes.
Yeah. Just empathy in general
would be
nice. Not to say that men can't have empathy, but it would be nice.
My father, my brothers, my husband all feel that way. They all feel that like they could not imagine if they, or God forbid, their wives or their partners were separated from their children. It's just like mind-boggling to most people, I think. And they think that's what's really frustrating, is that I see that as a nation, most people don't want to see that happening. Yeah. And that our government isn't really representing us fully by trying to make that happen. And that, I think that's what bothers me the most about it.
Yeah.
So I think most people do have empathy. I think most people do care. And even if they are critical of those parents' choice to come here with their children and think that was an unsafe thing for them to do, I don't think most of them want their children to be put in a position of being hurt because of it.
I agree. Well, let's
that's off my chest.
Transitioning. Yeah, thank you for that. I'm sure a lot of people are thinking that right now. So hopefully, that we can relate to that and connect to that. Well, tell me about your own path to motherhood. Like, was this did you really think about it? When do you remember thinking about, I want to be a mom?
I always wanted to be a mom. I wanted to be a mom since I was really little. I have 3 brothers, but I also come from a really large family. My dad is the baby of 9. And so I had tons and tons of cousins. And I did grow up in a really, a village-like atmosphere, in that my parents are kind of hippies, and we went to festivals together, and we would camp out all summer, and we would be in these large groups where the older kids are looking after the younger kids, and that starts really little. Like, I mean, older kids, as in 5-year-olds, keeping the 1-year-olds entertained while the parents are, enjoying themselves with each other. And that, I just always wanted a baby. I was playing baby dolls all the time. And when my mom had my brother, I was 4, and I was like, he's my baby. Like, I think I went through a short period of time in high school where I was like, oh no, I don't want children. Like, ew, like that sounds like so much work. But it was very short-lived. It was very short-lived.
And so when you met your husband, how soon was this part of the conversation? Like,
I would say within like a month or 2.
Yeah.
But it was a long process to get there. We were together for 5 years before we got married, and 2 more years before we had a child, or 2.5, 3. So even though we knew off the bat, like we met online, so I put that in my profile. I was like, I want children. Like, don't talk to me unless you want children too. At some point, I'm not saying that I want a baby right now because I was 23, but I did make it clear from the outset that that was a goal of mine in my life, to be a parent. And he was totally okay with that until it became like closer and closer, and then it was like, oh, the countdown's on. And then it was a little bit nerve-wracking.
So is that why? So the 2 years was more for him to get ready?
It was absolutely more for him to get ready. And we got to a point where we had that conversation of, okay, he thought that you should have certain things in place before you should have children. And I agreed to a certain point that those things help. Having a secure place to live, like you own your home, or you have an apartment that you feel really comfortable with, having a car that you feel comfortable putting a child in, having a secure job. All of those things help you feel ready for parenthood. But you can make that list really long in terms of like what you need before you can have a child. And my husband was making it longer and longer. It was like, well, we need to have a certain amount in the bank, and we need to have this type of insurance, and we need to have traveled to this place because I know we can't do it after we have a baby. And then it just got longer, and I had to say, there's no perfect time. You know, that like this list could go on indefinitely. The things you're putting on the list are now things that most people put on their list for retirement. Like, at some point you have to cut it off and be like, okay, it's now or never. And I do want more than one child, so it's also a timing thing. Women are more aware of that than men.
So now that you have your child, and your daughter, Jennifer's how old?
She's a 1.5 years old.
She's a 1.5 years. Has he eased up or on the planning?
Oh, totally.
Or because
as soon as when I was pregnant, it was like he kind of, even though he was excited and we meant to get pregnant, but it happened really quickly. Like, I don't think either of us expected it to happen as quickly as it did. He was kind of in a little bit of denial that it was happening. Like, he was still like trying to like get in all the stuff before the baby comes. Like, I'm going to do all the things. I'm going to go on all these trips, and because I won't be able to do anything after I have a child was a lot of his mindset. But now that she's here, it's definitely, oh, okay, life is different, but I can still do stuff. I just have to do it differently. And because of that, it makes it easier for him to wrap his head around more kids, or, whatever changes may come.
You've got to appreciate the planning now. Even though any parent you talk to says there's no way you can be 100% a parent. It's going to completely change your life. But you have to appreciate like the thoughtfulness of like, okay, we're going to do this, and our life is going to change. And to have some of that still present, so as things come up, because your daughter's going to go through a lot of different life cycles and
a lot of different phases. One thing this last 2 weeks, I had my niece at our house, and she's 13. And I was a big part of her early childhood when I lived in Philadelphia, and I lived with her dad. We shared a place. And I got really close to her then, and then I moved away. And she came out to stay with us for 2 weeks. And it was a shocker to me, like the difference in having to parent a teenager for 2 weeks. I was just like, oh, wow, this is really so different. I have to be so much more aware of what I'm talking about. I have to be so much more aware of my tone. I have to be on it in a different way than you have to be with a toddler, which you physically have to be on it. But like, she doesn't really give a fuck what I say. I mean, my daughter is not, she's not repeating things yet. She's not talking yet. we speak 2 languages at home, which can delay speaking.
Yeah.
And so she is not really saying words.
Yeah.
She's doing a lot of baby babble. And so I don't filter myself. And I had to really rein that in with having a teenager in the house. And that is just, I'm like, oh, that's going to happen again and again and again.
Yeah. Yeah, and she's impressionable right now. So some things that you say are quick dismissals of like things that, oh, that's not a big deal. Is important to go, wait a second.
Or I'm treating her too childishly because I was used to thinking of her as a younger kid. And she's now a teenager.
I think that's a great thing for you to learn now. I think most parents have a hard time with that transition when their parents and when their kids actually become adults. Like, how do we now reframe our relationship where you're actually an adult person and I am too? So it's good that you had that awareness with her.
But I think it's awesome. I think that I got that a real eye-opening experience, and it's special being an aunt. And I think that's one of the things I would love to talk about is that it's such a cool thing being the aunt. It's such an important
I 100% agree. I have like 14 nieces and nephews.
my
favorite title is aunt. Honestly, I love being an aunt.
It's such an important role.
Yeah, I don't get to see them. Nobody's here, so that's tough.
See, that was the same. She lives in Philadelphia, and so do my other nephews. And I love talking to her, and we text, and we do social media together. I keep an eye on her Instagram for her dad. Because I'm on Instagram way too much, and so I do watch her stuff, and I'm like, hey, do you really want that up? Like, and I ask her because it's her stuff, you know. But the relationship that I have with her of like being the cool aunt is something that I will never not want to be.
Totally feel you on this one.
And I don't want to.
I hope I'm a cool aunt forever.
Yeah,
really.
You want to be
even
the cool
if I
aunt.
Get a little crazy cool aunt towards the, I don't care.
I don't care about.
I'll be a crazy cool aunt in my 70s. It's fine. All right. Well, what surprised you the most about motherhood? You could like name just like one, like the top thing.
I know it sounds like really dumb and like it shouldn't have surprised me, but the exhaustion level, just like the overall tiredness that I was exhausted when I was pregnant. I have fibromyalgia, and so that is a chronic illness that makes you tired to start with. Yeah. And then I had my baby didn't sleep. She really didn't. For the first couple of months, she was an every 2-3 hour awake baby all through the night. And it was, I was shocked by the exhaustion level, but I was also shocked at my ability to like muddle through and still be functional on like 4 or 5 hours of sleep.
Do you think your husband would answer the question the same way?
Probably.
And were you guys in shifts? How do you handle that?
I'll be honest. So
because he was working probably, right?
Yeah, he was working and I wasn't. Like I took a long maternity leave, and then I still am not full-time back. I work part-time and I work mostly from home. I do management stuff and emails and all of that stuff from my house. Yeah. And I go into our shop maybe once a week. He's there all the time, and he went back right away. And when you own your own business, nothing stops because you have a child. You can't be like, oh, I'm going to take paternity leave and just not pay your paychecks for the next several weeks. I need a break, and sorry, guys, figure it out. Like, that's not something that happens when you own your own business. Right. So even when I was in labor, he had to leave. Like, because I had this is crazy, but I had a crazy long labor. I had 56 hours of labor.
Oh, goodness. Oh, my goodness.
I know. I know. People are like, is that a thing? Like
56 hours.
Yeah. I had 56 hours of labor, and then I had a C-section. And so during that first 24 hours, it was still pretty low level. I mean, I was in the hospital. I was getting Pitocin, and I was doing as well as I could, but it wasn't active, like, pushing labor. So he left. He would like trade it off with my mom. They would take shifts, and she would go back to my house and take a nap, and then they would switch off, and he would be with me, or the opposite way around. He would go to work, and then he would come back and be with me. And it was like he had to go in. He had to do that, and he still had to do that after we had her. And because of that, because he had to be up and working, and because he's just not a good, he can't wake up. Yeah. He just can't fucking wake up. It's like
he's not a morning person.
He's not a middle of the night person. He could do the early morning, which is what we ended up working out. Yeah. Was that I would wake up with her because I would wake up at the smallest sound, which is something that I didn't expect either. But moms get this insane like sense that their baby is awake, even if it's not even in the room with you. You just somehow wake up, and then 2 minutes later they're awake, or they're making noise. And he wouldn't hear it. And so I was just like, all right, I'll do night duty. You get up at 6 a.m., I go back to bed.
Yeah.
And I would go back to bed for 3 hours because he didn't have to open the store till 10.
Yeah.
And so that's how we worked it out. And I think a lot of parents do that, and they don't talk about it as much. Everybody wants to be like, oh, yes, we took shifts, and it was 50-50, and I made my husband do it.
That's the Facebook version.
That is the Facebook version. The social media version is, I wouldn't accept anything less than my husband waking up with our child too.
That's hilarious.
And the reality is that you figure out something in between.
Well, what I like most about this story, or what you're sharing, is it goes back to what you shared earlier about like this village mentality that you had. So, you know, instead of like, oh my gosh, this is a problem, I'm in labor for so long, and my husband can't be here, and he needs to run our business. It was like, of course, mom and him could take shifts, or somebody else could come in and do that. And like, it's important to, you know, I would think, I'm not a parent, but as you start this process, to already enlist people, to like let them know that you do have a role in all of this, and you know, and we're going to need help, because you're going to be experiencing a whole new level of exhaustion. Yeah. And having a little bit of plan, so like your husband sounds great, you know, like, is going to be helpful. Like,
one of the things that I wish I had known about before I had my child that I now know about is called, oh, now I'm going to blank on it. Oh, that sucks when you just can't remember the term. It's when you sign up online for meals, and everybody brings a meal on different days, and you can put it out to your social media list, your email list, and everybody.
So it's an app that like you can send to your friends and family.
Oh, now it's killing me. It's going to come to me in like 20 minutes.
We'll figure it out, and we'll share it in the archive. Don't worry about it.
But before that, before we had our child, we didn't know anything about it, and so we just had his parents bringing meals, and at a certain point I was like, I really need a break from my in-laws. I don't want them to be coming every day. And our friends and family were like, oh, well, they didn't say anything. They didn't say they needed anything. And I wasn't gonna say I was gonna need anything either, because I felt kind of embarrassed about it. Like, oh, I should be up and around. I should be doing it myself.
I think this is a good segue to what we're kind of here to talk about, is like, so, you know, I'm sure in this process there were some single friends, like you have some single friends that they're like, oh, Liz is a new mom, you know, she's on a different path, and they didn't know how to be supportive and you know, your new endeavors, and so they got left out of that list, or because that conversation didn't take place. Like, sometimes
couldn't take place. Like, I think that one of the hardest parts about after you have a child is you think you have to have it together right away. And so you don't want to seem like you're drowning, and you are. Like, I don't know if any mother says that she's got it together 2 weeks after she has a baby, she's a liar. She is a huge liar. Like, you are lying if you're saying that. I think it's bullshit that we try to put out there, that we're like, oh yeah, I'm just such a natural at motherhood. Like, and I actually do feel I am a natural at mothering, and I feel comfortable with that role. But after you have a baby, it is so overwhelming, and you're so alone. You just created a life, and yet you're the loneliest you have ever been in your life. And it is incredibly hard, and you can ask anyone with depression or anxiety that's without a child how hard it is to reach out and say, I need help. And so I think as a community, we have to acknowledge that.
And especially, so you talk, you shared in your bio that you did experience some postpartum, right? And you don't know that you're experiencing postpartum. Like, you can't. But when did you really understand that that's what was happening?
I read an article. I read an article on Motherly, and Motherly is an awesome website, and it was about postpartum anger. And I thought that postpartum depression was when you are sad all the time and you want to cry all the time and you may want to hurt your child. And none of those things were happening to me. I was pissed. I was so angry at my husband, at my friends and family, at everyone for not jumping in. And I wasn't telling them that. I wasn't telling them. No, when they asked me how I was going, oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm doing great. The baby's so sweet. She's so cute. She's so wonderful. We have this amazing connection. Breastfeeding's going well. I tell them everything else. But I didn't realize that the breakdowns that I was having, the angry breakdowns, were not normal, and some amount is normal. The baby blues are a normal thing, to have your hormones dip and go, you know, you have a little bit of mood swings. But the level that I was having was not normal, and it was making it harder for other people to get close to me and to help me get out of that. And it wasn't until I read an article that postpartum could cause you to be really angry, and it could come up with anxiety. You could get that tightness in your chest. Those feelings, those can be postpartum too. That I was like, oh man, that's exactly what.
How did you overcome it?
I went to a therapist. I am a big proponent of getting professional help.
Me too.
I went to a therapist and I talked about it, and I talked about my guilt at feeling this way. I talked about how I was afraid to tell people, like especially my doctor. I was afraid initially to tell my doctor because I thought maybe they would take my child. That if they knew that I had angry outbursts, that they would think that my child was unsafe. And even though my child would never be around when it happened, it would always be after she went to bed, when I was just like, I was out. I was running on empty. I didn't have any spoons left. You know, like it just, so when I got help, when I got professional help, that was like my turning corner. And one of the main things they said to me was, you need to tell people. You need to tell your friends. You need to tell your family that you need help. And that was when my mother-in-law jumped in, my aunt who lives in Los Angeles, who I love, my Aunt Liz, I'm named after her. She started taking the train from Culver City to Fullerton, where I live, on a weekly basis, just to hold my baby and spend like a half day to a full day, depending on how I felt, with her, so I could leave my home.
Yeah.
I think the main thing that I really needed wasn't actually somebody to watch my baby. It was somebody to hang out with me.
Yeah.
I felt so lonely, and I think that's the key for a lot of new parents and friends of new parents, is just show up.
Yeah. I mean, even I'm not a parent, but even in sharing what you just shared, I can relate to it because I've experienced like having a project, right? Maybe like in my case, what's coming to mind is like a big event, like put on a big event, and the event was really successful.
So stressed.
And those moments when I go home, I can think of almost every single one that I've ever hosted. I go home in the most despair and loneliness, like after this big thing is over.
Right.
So I can't even imagine like having a child, you know, what that feels like. But there is something, because you just did something so incredible,
and people are so excited
and you don't know,
you.
Like nobody knows how to.
You know, when you're planning a big event and everybody is like, "Oh, tell me all about it. Tell me all the details. I can't wait to go. I can't wait to see it. It's going to be incredible." They're super supportive. After the event is over, nobody's around, right?
Yeah.
Imagine that event doesn't actually end, but stays and lives at your house.
And it's growing.
And is growing.
And is hungry.
And is hungry and is like literally hanging on your breast. And you're being like sucked dry, emotionally and physically. Yeah. And everybody was like, "Oh, you did the thing, good for you." And they're out. Like they're out because they don't know what to do. And I think my favorite thing that helped me the most is I had two of my girlfriends, and I have a huge online community that I'm really close with on Twitter. It's an odd thing to say, but some of my best friends are from Twitter. But they showed up with Popeyes at 11:30 in the morning, and we watched movies, and we talked, and they brought me like a fancy robe. We celebrated my friend Maggie's birthday at my house because I could not leave. I showed up, like they showed up to my house and my boob was hanging out, like straight up, and I didn't even know it. That's how out of it I was. And this was maybe 2 months postpartum. And, you know, I was nursing all day. You stop feeling things. Like you just, you get like a numb, like, I mean, not like they're numb if you were to touch it, but like you just don't care. Like you're just like, it's as if, you know, all those nip slips you see celebrities have, or like, and they seem like totally like clueless that it's happening. That is happening all day when you're, but you're like less famous. So they showed up to my door and my nipple was straight up out, and I didn't know it because it had one of those like special like little peekaboo things so you can nurse in the shirt and then put it back. And I didn't know it was open. And they came in with like a cake for her birthday, Popeyes, a fancy robe. We did face
Thank God
masks.
it wasn't a UPS man.
Oh, it wasn't a UPS guy. Thank God. I wasn't answering the door for UPS guy. I actually put up a sign. It said, "If you ring my doorbell, I will murder you." Because I was like,
new mom.
You wake up my baby, I will follow you. I will track you down and kill you. But they came to me, and they came during the day, which is something, I think one of the hardest things for new moms and friends of new moms is that your schedule changes so drastically.
Right.
You are used to getting together for drinks in the evening. You're used to having dinner. You're used to doing these things after work, right? After work time. And on the weekends, most people without kids, they like to sleep in.
Yeah.
There's no sleeping in when you have children. And going out at dinner time is actually hell, because that's when your child melts down.
Yeah.
Like around 4 or 5 o'clock, parents call it the witching hour, which is just your kid has had enough. They're hungry, they're tired. It's the end of the day, and there isn't a lot you're going to be able to accomplish and be happy about, especially early days. And so a lot of my friends would be like, oh, let's grab some dinner. And I'd be like, no.
Yeah.
Or let me watch your baby for you. And I was like, I nurse my baby, so no, you can't watch my baby and let me go out. I don't want to go out it's not realistic.
Yeah. So what's coming up for me in sharing all this, so, being on the other side of this, because I don't have children, I love children. I absolutely love them. I love babysitting them. I love everything about them. And I love giving them back to their parents when I'm done loving on them.
Which is awesome.
I love that the most. But let's talk about you take the mom role, I'll take the single woman role, and say, like, here's some things you shouldn't say to each other. Like, just how can we? Yes, our life has changed. Our life stages have changed, and we're no longer on the same path where we can have a happy hour at 5 o'clock. So what are some things that we can talk about, and we should say to each other early on, so we keep that friendship alive? So, like, what would be helpful?
I think the main one you should be aware of is that the communication style is going to change. Text. Don't call me. Yeah. I mean, now it's fine. It's still easier to text, but texting is pretty key, because you can do it while you're doing other things.
Yeah.
And you still have that one-on-one connection. A lot of my friends, because I couldn't answer the phone, we just stopped talking. And so they thought that, through social media, that's enough of a connection, and they're commenting on photos, and we're doing that, and I'm always on social media. But that's not a one-on-one connection. That's a group connection.
Yeah.
That's a completely different thing.
Do you think it would have been helpful if, like, we take a lead from your husband's planning to, like, sit down and kind of talk to some of the friends, like, hey, I don't know what's going to happen, but I just know for sure my baby's going to need to sleep, and we're not going to be able to answer phones.
That was going to be the case. I think a lot of first-time moms have a real different idea of how it's going to go, and they think it's going to be, your life with a baby. It's just going to be the life that you had.
Plus baby.
You're going to be able to do those things. And yeah, you might be late sometimes. Everybody moms are late.
Yeah.
You might not go out as late, or you might not be drinking. But those will be the big differences, and you'll be tired, of course. Yeah. When your entire schedule has shifted about 3 hours earlier, and you need your friends to be aware of that and be cool with lunch instead of dinner. I mean, it's simple as that.
So communication and asking questions. So, like, on my end, asking a new mom friend, like, hey, as you get settled in, will you let me know what your new availability is? And not settled in was the wrong phrase, actually. Like, as things change, I know you just had your daughter, but I want to be a part of your life. Right. How can I be supportive, or what does this look like, for us to get out?
Yeah. I think it's a tough one, because, like, from your perspective, you're asking the right question. You're saying, what do you need? What can I help you with? But most moms don't know. So
at that point, you go, I don't know yet.
I don't know yet. I don't know yet. And I think the answer to that is, and I said it earlier, and I don't think I said it clearly enough, is you guys pick a time and just show up. If it is daytime, I'm going to be there. I can't leave my house. I'm not going anywhere. My baby's not going anywhere. We're probably just sitting in front of our TV. And yeah, that's not interesting, but that is where I'm at right now, and I need you to meet me there.
Early stages. So I think our first tip here is, like, early stages for the single friends is just to say, here's some daytime times where I can come. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Can I come see you?
Can I come see you on a Saturday or a Sunday? Like, I'm going to be free this specific Sunday, and I would love to come over at 11 a.m.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, can we agree on this one thing? And if we can, it's fine. Can a new mom never say to a person that doesn't have children, you just don't get it, you'll never understand?
That's the worst thing to say to any single parent, any single person, anybody who doesn't have children. It hurt me before I had kids, and I wanted kids, and my brother would say that to me. Oh, Liz, you just don't get it. Yeah. You just don't get it. You don't have kids, you don't get it. And that was like a stab in the chest because I wanted a baby. And then even if you don't want children, it's just hard. Yeah. To say you just don't get it. Well, help me get it.
Right. Well, it actually just, to me, is the fastest thing that shuts down the relationship. It's like, you don't get it. Oh, we don't get each other anymore? Well, screw you.
I guess I'll just move on to a different friendship.
It is so alienating. I have had it said several times to me, and I think
the answer when somebody is really not getting it, like I had a couple of times people just said, and this is one that I can't stand, especially when your child is under a year old, just bring the baby. Just bring the baby. They'd be like, oh, we're going to be doing this thing. It starts at 7:30 p.m. Just bring the baby. You don't have to leave her at home or find a sitter, because I'd be like, oh, I can't find a sitter. Or I'm just not ready to leave my baby yet. And they just bring the baby. It's not that easy. I've done it. I've brought my baby to parties. It's not fun, usually, because not everywhere is baby proof. Not everywhere has enough hands to help you out. And then you're essentially just hanging out with your baby.
And you might need it. You might need to go to something without, you might need that break too. So it's not just, that's not
the solution. Yeah. Is just bring your baby. And the other thing is don't stop asking us to come out. Yeah. Don't stop asking us to things.
I thought about that too. I think where the breakdown happens between women with children and women who don't is they just assume that you don't want the invite, or like vice versa, or, that like just stop. She's obviously busy. I'm not going to bother her.
Like, she's tired. I don't want to invite her to something, and then she has to say no, and then she feels sad, and then don't assume how we feel. Mm-hmm. I don't want to assume how you feel. Send the invite and leave it up to them. They're an adult, and they will figure out how it goes. But if they say they can't for some various reason, be sympathetic. Don't argue with it. Yeah.
I think that where I'd like to kind of put the emphasis on this is, like, if there was something that made two women be friends before a child is introduced, like it's still there. There was opportunity for each to understand. Yeah. And you had to build to get there. You had that question ask. You had to really learn. Like, I'm a big advocate of why questions. Like, I feel like if I called you tomorrow and said, what's going on, and you said, I'm breastfeeding my baby or whatever, right. Maybe that's not the best example, right. But like, I'm at home working on something, well, why? What's going on? Why is this important to you? Asking those types of questions, like, keeps the connection going. And if you were able to do that prior to this life change, you could still do that. And it's probably more important because there has been a shift. Right. And if you get through one life stage change, there's other things that are happening, because honestly, there's going to be other things that happen.
Oh,
God
absolutely.
forbid, you lose a spouse.
There's so many big changes that can happen in your life. I think one of the things for moms to remember is that your friend's life didn't stop and change. Mm-hmm. So you need to still ask them about their lives. Mm-hmm. Like, I have a lot going on. I'm really overwhelmed being a new parent. Say that for 6 months, especially. Mm-hmm. Your friend is still the same person, and you used to ask them what was going on in their life. And if you haven't asked them a question in a while, you're being selfish. Yeah.
Well, it's not just selfish, but that is a barrier to keeping that friendship going. Yeah. Like, if you don't check in, any assumptions in relationships are a relationship breaker, but asking the question.
And you have to be specific in that. It can't just be like, so what's up?
Yeah.
Like, that's not enough. If I know that my friend, I have a lot of friends that I know through music, and I know that they're really into concerts, or I know that they have been saving up for some specific thing. I need to ask about that thing. Yeah. that didn't change in their lives. That's still their focus. If they were working towards a promotion, I need to ask how that's going.
Is mommy brain a thing where you're forgetful?
It's absolutely a thing.
So I would say, and just what you just shared, like sometimes you might have to remind somebody.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, totally remind us.
Hey, I remember I was going to this thing. I want to tell you about
it.
Yeah.
The other thing is that you have to kind of get used to this new way of communicating, because I do still talk on the phone. And I call it, a lot of people call it a mom-servation, like a mom I don't even, like instead of a conversation, it's a mom-versation, because in between talking to you, I'll be like, hey, how was your day? Stop that, put it down.
Yeah, I heard that.
Don't put that in your mouth. And I'm not telling you.
I do that with my dog.
Like you're doing
I have dogs. How would we say
it's the same.
Yeah, I do.
I say it all the time. Dogs and babies are not that different. Yeah. Like kids and animals are not. We're all animals. Dogs basically just stay toddlers. That's like
this is true.
I have
and they never talk back to you, and they don't hate you when they're a teenager.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and they don't really have attitude. Like my dogs will have attitude for like a half a second, and then they're like, "Oh wait, I'm sorry." Like, but that style of communication takes a little bit to get used to with your friend. But you can still have strong conversations, important conversations, and especially like. I think one of the things that a lot of moms struggle with in relationships is your relationship with your spouse. It's going to change so dramatically, and you don't see it coming. You think that, we're going to get closer. We're going to add this new level of our relationship. Well, yeah, you are going to get closer in some ways. You're going to become a partner in a way that you've never been before. But most new parents struggle in their relationships, and I think that it's important to ask and talk about that. And be honest about that, because that's something that your friend can relate to no matter what.
Right. That's exactly what I was thinking the whole time you were saying that. That's like your girlfriends, you always talk about your relationship. So
yeah, why would you stop?
When one's a mom and one is not, you can still talk about relationships. Right. That's an easy thing to kind of you still need your friends for that.
Right.
Absolutely need your friends for that.
Exactly. I mean, I've had friends go through divorces. I've had friends that have met somebody new. I've had friends go through all these different phases of their relationships, and sometimes they forget that I'm still in one. Like they're like, oh, she's a mom now, she's got all these things. But they don't. It's like they've forgotten that I'm also married, and like and my relationship is different from a lot in terms of we share almost every project we work on. I told you that earlier, and that can be stressful. And so those relationships are important to like touch in on and be like, okay, what is the most important thing to you that's hard for you right now? Because that's where you can connect.
I think the last thing that I want to talk about is the issue of babysitting. So how do you?
That's complex,
right? Is there a best way? Like, I'm sure there's some friends that are like, I want to be there for that. I want to be able to offer my friend and her husband a date night and babysit, and then there's some that's like, don't ask me, like just don't eat. Like, have you found a balance?
Have to read your friend. I have friends that are afraid to hold babies.
Yeah,
like that's not going to be the friend that can help you out.
Exactly.
But I've said this in my blog recently. One of the really important things is that my child is now the most important thing to me in my life, and that sounds extreme to non-parents.
Also sounds pretty real.
But it is real. Like she is the most important person in my life. She comes before my husband right now. I mean, obviously our relationship is really top of the line priority too. But her needs are going to come before any of that. If you don't connect with my kid or even try, that's going to feel like you resent my kid and that you are resentful of my life changing. So if you come to my house and you talk to me just about things not related to my kid, you don't look at my kid, you don't talk to my child. I don't need you to hold my kid necessarily, but talk to my kid, be aware they are a person. Yeah. That is going to make me feel like you accept my new life. As for babysitting, I think that you have to be aware of what stage of life your friend, the new parent, is in. I wasn't comfortable leaving my kid for more than an hour and a half to 2 hours at first because I was breastfeeding and she wouldn't take a bottle. And that was like a really big process for me. And I didn't trust anybody. Even my friends that I knew were experienced, I was still like, no, not happening, until she was about 6 months old. Once we got through that barrier, it is awesome when my kid connects with somebody and I feel comfortable with that. And you can say, hey, I'm going to be free on next Friday. Do you and your husband want to go out? That's a great way to do it, because I'm not going to ask you. I'm not going to call you up and be like, hey, do you have plans on this night? Because I really want to go to the movies. Because for some reason, most parents are going to assume that even though you said you wanted to babysit, you were just being nice. You were just being nice.
And I think this topic is like something that you have to check in with people too, because
they're gonna change.
Somebody might want to do that 1 or 2 times just to like, hey, I want to be a supportive friend, so you guys can have a date night. But I can see where there could be some resentment that enters in when you keep asking, and now they're like, oh, I'm the only person that's doing it. Like, I have a social life too. So this is just something. Like, again, if there's any kind of theme in our conversation, it's just no assumptions. Like, sometimes assumptions are okay, or you can have a couple of them, but this is in this time where people are changing and life is shifting and schedule is shifting. It's like, don't assume that you know, and check in quite a bit.
I think every 3 months, just that's going to be a changing point. If you think about it in like babies' clothes sizes, you know, every 3 months they're going to go up in sizes. They're also going to change drastically developmentally. And so your friend's life is going to change drastically.
That's a really good point. I mean, so single ladies like me, or women that don't have children, think about that. Like, you know, check in with your friend that has a child, and if she's like, oh yeah, she's wearing 3 months now, you know that a shift has occurred and things are a little bit differently. That's actually really
I think about it in 3 month terms, because that is how your friend's life is functioning right now. After that 1 year mark, things get crazy different, and I think that it's awesome how things get different, because this is when most moms start finding themselves outside of their kids. And I think that's really key to staying sane, is that you don't forget about who you were before you had a child. Before I was a child, I was a singer-songwriter. Before I was a child, I was a business owner. Before I was a child, before I had a child, I wrote and I did all these things. And when I had her, they all fell aside. And I had to re-find them. But now that she is up, she's walking, she's starting to communicate, all of that stuff, all of a sudden I want to do it again. And I want my friends to be there. And that's when they can pop in and be like, hey, I know you want to work on this thing. I know you have a show. Would you rather me be there? Or would you rather me watch your kid? That's an awesome thing to do. And that's when you get to reconnect on those things that brought you together in the first place.
Absolutely.
Because I still, you know, a big part of how I find friends, and I had to find a whole lot of new friends, because there is the friends that just couldn't make that leap. With my schedule
you need
changing.
Advice too. You kind of need someone that's a little bit ahead of you.
The moms that are experienced that have more than one kid, they have been so key to me figuring out how I mom, and it's not exactly how they mom, but it is so helpful to not feeling lonely. But they just were able to say, okay, the ones that I get along with, we're still talking politics, we're still talking about world events, we're still talking about music, and that's the same with your friendship.
So we're gonna switch gears. Is there like one last thing that you're like want to share with moms? You're like, ooh, this was the really important thing. You talked about is Motherly a blog? Like, that's a great site.
Yeah, Motherly is a great blog site. They post different bloggers articles. Hopefully one day I'll get on there. But I think the main thing that I think is important for new moms is to maintain those relationships and find new ones. Find your mom group, find your weirdos, find your village, find your people, because they exist. When you first are a new mom, you may think that you're the only one of your kind. And nobody is like you.
What do you think about if we're gonna take your husband's lead and do a little pre-planning? Should you pre-plan getting a mom's group in place? So that's not something, that shouldn't be an afterthought, really, right?
No, it shouldn't be an afterthought. And you may have to think outside the box. Like, I started and I went to like the Fullerton moms group, because that's where I live, and they're great, but they're a huge age range. And then I tried one for moms that just had babies around the exact same times I did. oh wait, but we had nothing in common outside of our baby's age. I had to go to, this is odd, but a secular moms group, because Orange County is pretty religious and I'm not. I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. And so I needed to find moms that were pretty liberal. I needed to find moms that had things in common with me outside of our babies. And once I did that, that was key. So just keep going.
Yeah.
Like the key is don't give up if the first mom group you try isn't a good fit. That doesn't mean that those moms that you would get along with aren't out there. Maybe you are religious. Maybe that is a really important aspect of your life. Find that group that is that thing. It doesn't have to be that you just are moms and you live near each other or you have children the same age. You want more than that.
Yeah.
And so I think that is really super key to being a new parent.
Find your tribe.
Find your people.
Find your people.
Find your people.
All right. Well, this has been awesome. We're going to do 2 more things. Actually, 3. Actually, we're going to do 3 more things before we end our time together in this conversation. So one of the things that I like to do, we were totally on topic, just talking about you as a mom, and we already know there's lots more about you. And so we can shift this a little bit and learn more about you. So the way that I do that is just asking you like a random question.
Got it.
You ready for that?
Let's do it.
They're sometimes very silly. The box has a mind of its own. Sometimes it will stay on topic, sometimes it will be completely off. Oh yeah. Have you ever drunk dialed anyone?
Oh yeah, I drunk dial my husband every time I'm out of town. Every single time.
Well, thank God it's him.
He finds it super annoying. And every time I'll call him up and be like, I love you. And he's just like, you're drunk.
You're drunk.
That's it. I'm out.
Oh gosh, both of these. I have to reshuffle the deck. I've asked both of these questions recently.
Gotta get something new.
What is the biggest crime you've committed?
Like actual crime? Oh God, I was a bad teen.
Yeah,
I was a really bad teen. So I did run from the police once.
Is that a crime?
I don't know. It would have been. We were drinking in a public park, under a bridge, as teens do.
Story just gets better.
And the cops showed up, and so we ran. And my friends were like, "Climb the fence," because we have to climb the fence to get out. I didn't know they were fucking with me. And so I climbed the fence and ripped my pants from like my butt to my knee.
Nice.
Get on the other side. They're all laughing at me because there's a gate like 6 feet down. But we got away because, you know, everybody else took the gate. But I guess drinking in public parks is probably one of my biggest.
So underage drinking.
Underage
running
drinking, running from the police.
All right. Yeah. You're such a criminal.
I'm horrible.
It's hard crimes here. All right, that's the new name of the show. Hard crimes. Hard crimes with moms.
No, I really lived it up.
Yeah. All right, so two other things we get to do. I like to ask the guests if they, everybody that sits in that chair, if they're okay with like giving a shout out to somebody, and we call it Heart Swell. So it's basically like, hey, taking the time to really tell somebody that they mean something to you, that they've made a difference in your life. I think the reason that I love having people do this and me doing this is like we just don't take enough time out to do that. And if I show people it's not that hard, more of us will do it. I hope people watch the show and go, you know what, I should call somebody. Like I should call my aunt. I haven't talked to her in a while. That's my intention. Are you willing to share one?
Yeah.
Okay. So you get to look right at the camera and talk to this person. You might have a couple, and that's fine too.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the most important people that I have to thank are my moms. My own mom, Johnny Sue, you're amazing. She talks to me every 2 days and gets me through the hardest moments. My best friend, Leslie, you are always, always there for me, and I hope I am there for you in the exact same way. You're an incredible mother. You run your own little business, and I just am blown away by that. And my mom crew in general, I love you guys over at Secular Moms. You guys have been super supportive. And my Twitter friends, my Twinja, love you guys. You're all awesome, and you make my life better. You make it more supportive, and you make me feel less alone.
Awesome. Well, Liz, we're at the end of the show. I really thank you for being here. There is one more thing we're going to get to do. So we often issue a social challenge of the week, something inspired by our conversation. Okay. So I'm kind of landing on like, is there a question that women without children and women with children can kind of ask each other to check in? And if there is, what would that question be? Is something coming to mind for you? Something's percolating. I want to see if you.
I think my big one is, are you available on this specific time? name a time, name a place. Don't let it go vague, because when it goes vague, it's easy to say, "Oh yeah, sure," but not actually make that connection.
Right. So it's really about time and getting together. So
yeah,
it's like
be together.
So maybe first part of that is I want to see you.
I want to see you.
And how can we do this?
Yeah.
Or what's a good time for you?
Yeah, like let's do this time. Let's be this place. Let me come to you.
Yeah.
Can I come over?
Both parties can do that.
Yeah,
both sides
both
of the
parties,
equation.
Yeah.
I like it. All right. So that's the question that women are going to be asking each other all around the country to just check in with their mom friends and women that don't have children, because the check-in is needed on both sides.
It's like, can I come over is the best thing that you can ask someone.
Yeah.
Because you just want to be with them, and if you make it now, you make it imminent, it's so much easier to say, you know what, there really actually isn't that much that's stopping me from being close to you.
Yeah. I like it. Well, especially if you're making an effort, right?
Right.
There's nothing stopping.
You know, showing up is 90% of a friendship. And if you aren't showing up physically and emotionally, then that friendship won't survive. Can I come to you? Can I come over? Is like the most important thing I think you can ask.
All friendships could learn from that. Yeah. Showing up for each other. All right. Well, we did it.
Yeah.
That's the end.
This was awesome.
I really appreciated having you here. We're going to share out all your links. We'll try to think of that thing that you couldn't remember about meals. We'll figure it out after the show. We'll share that out in the archive. We'll definitely figure it out.
It's still killing me.
Have you blogged about it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, then we know where to find it.
We do.
Perfect. Yeah. So you want to read Liz's blog? It's Redheaded Rambling Mama.
Redheaded Rambling Mama
.blog. And I will share that link because it is long. She's right.
I need to shorten that. You guys send me your ideas.
We'll come up with an acronym for it. And next week, our show, we're going to have Shauna, who wrote a book on going vegan, and it's a cookbook for the first 30 days with like yummy, yummy meals that are all different. So it's like, if you're thinking about making this change, she's made it really easy to do in a first 30-day plan with shopping list. So that's what we're going to be talking about.
Oh, cool.
Thank you for being here. We'll share out all of the links in the archive when we archive the show. We can look for that around Thursday. And of course, if you take the social challenge, reach out to us on Instagram or Twitter, and I'll share those links too so you can find it. Hers is on the screen right now, and mine, of course, is Love More Now. And that brings us to a wrap on this show. As always, I just want to encourage everybody to relate with more curiosity. See you next week. Bye, guys.